I mean, you've lost your keys, and then you'll spend 5 minutes looking for your keys. Were you closer to finding them after those 5 minutes? Not really. Because usually it's in one of those places that you already looked and just missed something. You know, at least that's the way it is for me. Here's the trick about finding things. You never get any feedback at all until you have actually found it. Right? It's the same with people. You get zero positive feedback when you're trying to help a lost person come to faith. You get zero positive feedback whatsoever until they actually do come to faith. That means if you're going to be part of Jesus' work of helping people get found, there's going to be a long stretch of time where you don't see any results, where you don't see anything happening about it. Zero positive feedback. But listen, that is why Jesus put so much energy into this. He knew it was hard work, and he knew he had to do it. And so here's one last blank I'd like you to fill out. It's just, regardless of stigma or frustration, Jesus poured everything he had into saving the lost. This morning, you may be found or lost. If you are lost, we're going to talk about, later on, you getting found. If you have been found, then you've been found by Jesus, and he found you for one purpose, to join him. If he's going to seek and to save the lost, he's going to find the lost, he's going to reclaim the lost so that they are now found and they are now finders, which means you are a finder. How do we do it? Okay, we're going to look at the whole Zacchaeus passage once again. That's Luke 19. If you've got our church Bibles, it's on page 729. I'm going to read the whole story once more, and then I'm going to draw out some application points from this story. Here we go, Luke 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Jesus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." I've got 5 rules for you based on what Jesus does in this situation. 5 rules that you and I need to put into our lives so that we can be part of the finding process. Rule number 1, be attractively different. A lot of times Christians are weird. And I don't mean you need to be extra weird. What I mean is you need to be attractively different. Let me mention a few things that should be different about you and me, because we know Jesus. Things that should be different and also should be attractively different. We should be people who have a connection to our Creator in heaven and a sense of purpose and mission in our lives. So that we should be the kind of people who can walk into work on a Monday morning and say, "Oh my goodness, you would not believe what I read this morning in my Bible. I read a passage that I'd seen 100 times before, but today, somehow it meant something more to me. Do you mind if I would share it with you?" We should be the kind of people who say, "You know, this last week I had a friend who is in need, and I was able to go over and help them, and I realized that you've got the same need. Would you like me to help you too?" We should be the kind of people who, when the world around us is crumbling, crashing, and falling down, we've got a joy that is unspeakable. We've got a sense of peace and confidence that there is a God who's in charge of everything and who is going to work everything out according to his plan. We should be people like that. And I think if we were, that would be attractive. Now, there's some Christians who like to be different by just simply spouting off a lot of verses, so that when someone is going through a hard time, they will just sort of spout off a lot of Christian verses to them. Some people like to be different by using a lot of highfalutin Christianese language like propitiation and sanctification and justification and other ifications. But, we don't need to be that kind of different. We need to be the kind of different like the people back in Jesus' immediate followers' age. You see, back in the first century, do you know what the disciples of Jesus did during that first century? It was standard practice that if you did not want the infant that was born to you, you would take that infant to the outskirts of the town and you would lay that infant on the ground and you would walk away. It was called exposure. Exposing the infant so that that infant would die and the animals could take care of it. That's what they used to do in the ancient Roman culture. But what the Christians would do is they had a daily posse that would go out to the outskirts of town looking for these infants. And they would pick them up and bring them back and adopt them and raise them as their own. It was so fascinatingly odd to the Roman people that they thought for a while Christians were taking these children to sacrifice them to their gods or to eat them or something, because they couldn't imagine anyone would take an exposed child. They just couldn't imagine it. And yet they did. And they raised them. And many thousands of infants were spared because of a group of people who said, no, we are going to be different. What would it be like for us? I look at Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus was willing to run. Not many short tax collector type people. Perhaps, couch potatoes. He's wealthy. He's maybe a little bit chunky. Not many of those kinds of guys would be willing to run ahead of a crowd and climb into a tree just so he could get a better view of some guy walking down the street. Why would he do that? Jesus was fascinatingly, attractively different. I believe we can be too. Rule number 2. Rule number 2 is walk around purposefully. Why was Jesus going through Jericho? Do you know? This is Luke 19. If we went backwards a couple chapters, we would see a part where Luke says about Jesus set his face on Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was the place where Jesus was going to go to die for the sins of the world. Jesus knew it. He had set his face on Jerusalem. He had fixed his gaze on Jerusalem. He was planning to go there, and nothing was going to hold him back. And so Jericho was one of the towns he had to go through to get to where his mission was. He was a man on a mission, and he was walking purposefully. We oftentimes